Minister of Labor and Employment, the burden of providing palliative measures for millions of Nigerians before the end of the petrol subsidy in June 2023 will fall primarily on the incoming Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. Ngige made this announcement at the 68th State House Ministerial Briefing, which was held at the Aso Rock Mansion in Abuja and hosted by the Presidential Telecommunications team. The subsidized palliatives will be implemented by the incoming government. The minister responded when questioned about the matter, and he says just hand it over to them. Joining us to discuss further is Clement Izuchukwu Igbanugo, who is an economist with Financial Derivatives Company Limited. Clement, you're very welcome. Good morning to you. What's the administration essentially saying when they say that, it's up to the next people to bring in the palliatives?
Well, basically, I wouldn't want to dabble into politics and political motives and all that. I think the most important thing is, first, agreeing that subsidy is going. Two is, what are we going to do? If we are going to remove subsidy, what Nigerians are looking at for is, what is the plan? The biggest problem we have in this country is that we do things without plan. People want it communicated so that they prepare themselves. The household, the firms, and all stakeholders that are going to be affected by this policy. People want the plan on time, so let it be communicated. So if it's this administration that is going to implement it, or the one coming is government. Government is a continuum. Right. So whichever that is going to implement it, let it be known ahead of time. And I don't think that will cause any...
So the fact that they had to make this announcement now, there were some whispers that the president-elect wanted this administration to remove them, to kind of give him some leeway as he gets in. Would that have made a difference? Whether who removes it or not?
I don't know. I don't think that makes any difference. At the beginning of the budget, when the budget was signed, we were told that the subsidy is only for the first half of the year. So, meaning that by June, it should be removed. The finance minister later said before the end of May. So all of these things are already in public domain, and we know it's going to happen. But this is not the first time governments were going to remove subsidy, because from the economics of subsidy removal, much more is the political economy of that same process. So, but for me, I don't know whether anybody is pushing for removal within this government circle and whatever. Anything that has to do with statecraft has to do with statecraft. So for us here is it necessary to remove subsidy? Are there benefits to the economy? Are there pains to be taken by Nigerians? And what is government doing? And how much will Nigerians trust government? I think that should be the conversation.
Okay, so where we speculated on the morning show that the palliatives could be applied in the transportation sector, where do you think, and even if that was the case, how do you track and make sure that if you're going to apply, because remember the Minister of Finance, they were considering a 5,000 naira, remember the 5,000 naira cushion for transport, right?
So cash transfer.
Exactly, for subsidies.
For the vulnerables.
For the vulnerables. How do you think this is applied?
The biggest problem in Nigeria is, number one, is trust deficit.
Right.
The people don't even agree or believe what government say they're going to do. And that is really affecting the trajectory of government policies. And that's why you see reactions here and there, protests here and there, once some certain announcements are made. That is one. Number two is, the subsidy itself, we know from the facts available to us that subsidy is distortionary. In fact, a World Bank report earlier had said that only 3% of the poor benefit from subsidy. And it's only Nigeria that even has the universal fuel subsidy. In Indonesia, firms, companies don't buy at subsidized rate. They buy at normal rate. They're able to, distinguish the poor from the rich, because if you say it is for the poor, then it has to benefit the poor. So if only 3% of the poor are benefiting from subsidy, then it means there is much more to it that needed to look into. So for me, government removing subsidy, I think we have come to that point where we need to bite the bullet. But the question is, the poor that are going to receive these harsh pains due to the fact that the little PMS they buy, they're going to spend more because it's just like you're going to take money away from them.
Yeah.
So there's going to be decline in consumption for the poor. So the remedy is the government will now have to, well, because of course when you remove the subsidy, you're going to get more revenue, more fiscal revenue, and it means that government will need to take this money back to the poor directly through what means? Through, number one, spending it on welfare-based infrastructures like healthcare. If I take the money I'm supposed to use for healthcare to buy, because remember that energy poor in Nigeria is estimated at 95 million.
Right.
So if I'm going to, meaning that those people are dependent, the access to national grid is less than 40% in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So it means that a lot of persons are having access to energy through their self-help of using petrol and all that. So what am I going to do to cushion this effect? Because you are going to take the money you are going to use for healthcare and then use it to buy fuel. So why not provide that healthcare? So if this money can be taken from the rackets and then taken to provide more healthcare, and it means that you are going to take that pain away from the people, and that is going to take back that consumption you have taken away from them, that amount you are going to bring it back. Now, remember that in infrastructure, the infrastructure stock in Nigeria is about 35%.
Yeah.
The average for developing economy is 70%. So Nigeria is far below. In fact, in Africa, Nigeria is ranked number 24. That's at the base. So we need to invest it in productive infrastructure that will have direct impact to the household and also to the firm. A lot of firms today are taking what's supposed to be social capital is now being provided by the firm, and that is increasing their cost. So we need to go back onto all that. Nigeria is one of the countries with the least minimum wage. So if you are going to take away subsidy, you are going to reduce my real income by the virtue of that price differential that, you know. So why go back to the minimum wage and then let's review it for the vulnerable, for the, because the issue with the cash transfer is very fantastic. But the issue with cash transfer in Nigeria is who are the poor?
Right. We identified
who is in the register.
Yeah.
We've had programs like that before, and people say we don't trust this system. If it will be transparent enough that I will be able to see that the poor in my village are in the list and it goes all over Nigeria, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think government should begin to focus on taking this money back to the poor once they take it out from the rackets.
Real quick, let me get your thoughts on the lending rates that are, at least the maximum lending rate going up. How, we're still talking about the poor, ability to get loans. This is another thing the administration has to focus on in order to make lending, affordable for businesses and individuals. So how do we work that out going forward?
You know, when you are raising interest rate, there are pains. You raise interest rate to contain inflation. But the pain is that you are going to raise borrowing costs, right?
Yeah.
Then when the borrowing cost is up, two things. Number one, it's going to affect investment and consumption. The investment demand will decline because many firms will not be able to afford to borrow as much they will need to expand capacity, right? And that's going to lead to decline in supply of goods too. But remember that because the savings rate is going to be up, technically, then it means that the propensity to save will increase and the propensity to consume will decline. So consumption down, and that will reduce pressure, right, on demand, theoretically, and that will lead to decline in inflation. Now, we know that this is going to be part of the pain. So, first of all is, for government, if you look at today, the informal sector contributes about 40% of the GDP. Yeah. And less than 10% of the players in the informal sector access this credit we're talking about. So even at the 28% or 30% of the maximum lending rate, the greater chunk of the economy, even when it was at 25%, we are not even accessing this credit. Right. So, and that is why you see that the Nigerian monetary system seems delinked. The greater chunk of the economy that is supposed to permeate are not even within its coverage. And so Nigeria needs to do much more in order to ensure that it strengthens its productive sectors and begin to onboard the informal sector into the mainstream to ensure that this access to credit is improved. But another issue is this. When investment declines and production declines, consumption may not decline as much. Why? Because this household rarely access credits, right? And this household also, a lot of them don't even know what is savings rate. So this incentive to save may not transmit much more to the household. So you're going to see another problem where supply has decreased, but demand has not decreased as much. And then you're going to see another pressure on inflation. Remember, we've been raising interest rate, and inflation has been increasing. Meaning that we need to look inwardly. We need to rethink our monetary policy framework. What are the true drivers of this inflationary pressure?
Clement, we got to go. We got to bring you back to have more conversation on this. Economist and Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Clement Igbanugo, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time. Lots of issues to discuss.